long, dangerous bridges, deep, perilous pits, cinematically cascading chambers. You can create all of this and more with our dungeon elevation system. Hi, I'm Nate, and I'm going to give you a masterclass in multi-level dungeon building. If you're not already familiar with our dungeon elevation system, I highly recommend watching our hands-on demo video for dungeon elevation and our hands-on demo video for daises, because we're going to be using all those fundamentals in these builds. Nothing looks cooler on the table than going vertical, so let's dive in and take a look at some of the possibilities for building upwards. Here we go. All right, so for this masterclass, we're going to start with constructed builds and then deconstruct the zones rather than going in the other direction. I thought it might be more helpful for learning the techniques. And we filmed sort of the time lapse of building these, and it made me think about the process a little bit, which I wanted to share. So the one important learning is it's not a straight line. So you don't start with an empty table and then just go nonstop in a straight line to a finished build. There are a lot of bits of trial and error, things that don't work. You'll see if you watch the process video that I will break areas down sometimes 2, 3, 4 times, just keep going until you get it to work, right? You think it's working, then you build something else out, and that makes you have to take that apart, whatever. So it's not a straight line. Don't be discouraged if you can't figure it out at first, you'll get there eventually. And similarly, you don't need to know 100% what you're building as you build. You need to know what the story is, what the mood is, kind of what the key features are. But I didn't 100% know what this thing was going to look like as I started. Some of it I discovered as I was building. Very similar to a D&D session where you set a situation, but you don't know what's going to happen with the players, right? You don't know exactly where it's going to go. Similarly, let the build discover as you're building. Let it breathe, and you'll find some surprising things if you don't try and force the process. Just sort of go with it and follow what's interesting. And then finally, the other important thing to remember is that it doesn't matter, right? Your players aren't going to care if you didn't have the LED wall in, or the magnetic wall wasn't right, or that you wanted to put that 1x2 or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you're presenting them a cinematic scene and you have a story laid out, they're going to remember those big moments and those big beats. They're going to remember the feel of the thing, but nobody is going to scrutinize every square inch of the thing. So let it go. Don't get hung up on the little details. Focus on the big things that are going to make a difference, and mostly just getting it done in time for your session, right? That's a finished build is way better than this perfect build that you never do. All right, so that being said, let's take a look at this build. So this is a 2-foot by 2-foot build, and I was trying to do multi-level play here, right? So the idea is there are 4, technically 5 levels of play here, and to sort of further emphasize that, the sort of gag of the encounter would be we've got 3 magic orbs here. So there's one up at the top at the highest level, there's one at the upper mid-level, and there's one down on the low level down here. And the theory is at initiative count 1, every turn, one of these orbs is going to send out a shockwave, a pulse, right? But it is planar. It is constrained to the 10-foot swath where that orb is. So maybe the first round, it's the bottom one that goes off, boom. And anybody that's in this level, right, in the 10-foot swath from here, gets hit with that shockwave. Then this one starts glowing. And the second turn, initiative count 1, this one goes off, sends out a shockwave, hits anything that's on a level, and then the third one up here. And you could make it random, or you could whatever. But the idea is that it's forcing the players to think about where they are at the end of their turn and change elevation because they don't want to get blasted by the shockwave. What does a shockwave do? I don't know. Why don't you put in the comments what would be a cool debilitating effect from these shockwaves that would really motivate the players to change levels? And so we have, to that end, there's a bunch of different playable heights, right? Because the elevation is mostly only useful if you can actually put minis there and play on it. So we have this upper level, you've got all this playable space, you've got the tops of these stairs, you get these tops of these arches, all playable at this plane. Then the upper mid-level, you've got all of this stuff is wonderfully playable. The tops of these bridges are playable. The mid-level is this dais area, this raised area, tops of these stairs, and then we've got the lower area, which is down the floor level here. And then the bonus fifth level is the water, right? If the players get desperate, they could dive into the water. Maybe there's piranhas in there, or acid, or some sort of fell magic, or who knows what, tentacles or something. But there is an option to go down and play with the sort of the negative, vertical negative, whatever that is, going down even deeper. So it's a fifth layer. So let's look at the techniques that we use. So for, using that framework, you could make a really fun encounter here. So we're going to start here with this bridge area and see what we did for building this thing out. Okay, so for this long bridge over here, and this is a nice long span, right? Lots of area to get into trouble in. In general, this encounter would be really fun if there were a bunch of small enemies, kind of thing that players can be just kicking them off bridges or throwing them off heights, or sort of like 4E minions, right? They're easy one-hit kills, but they're sort of hassling the players, slowing them, and making it hard. They're not a threat so much as they're slowing them down so they get blasted by the orbs. But anyway, this bridge, really long, nice, narrow run, so lots of potential for trouble. Very simple construction techniques, right? We're just taking 1x4 dungeon floors and putting them on the ancient pillars, right? And these things are kind of an interesting height. They are 1 floor height short of 4 inches, which means if you put them on a dungeon floor, they're exactly the height of 2 dungeon walls, so you can build lines. So they're very useful for suspending stuff up at double wall height of 2 walls. If you try and put a square, so the tops are a little awkwardly sized. If you're trying to put a 2x2 on there, it doesn't balance so well. So what you can do, what I often will do, is just invert them, right? You can flip them upside down, and then you can get a tile on there really nicely. So these are great for raising up big chunks of a room. You can put them under a terrain tray. Bump, you put 4 of them under a terrain tray and then build on the terrain tray, and you can do like a really cool raised section. In this case, we're just using them as is with 1x4 floors and a 2x1 over there to make a really nice long run. And what's fun, because these are 1x4s, you can pull one out with the other. There's potential for destructible bridge, right? Somebody could hit it, wherever you can take out a portion of it and just make it even more dangerous by knocking them down to 5 foot wide. The other fun technique that we're using at the front and the back of this bridge is inverting and double stacking the epic stairs. So these things are really fun. They get a little awkward sometimes if you want to build them up more than a single height. So what we did over here is we took a pair and just put them on top of each other. They sawtooth really nicely together, and then that makes this really beautiful curved base that can go right down onto negative space and nicely, and then pop the next one on top, sort of thing. And if you're anticipating, you can put a little white stick on these pieces if you want to make sure they're super secure, so this bridge doesn't collapse during play. And the back, we did the exact same technique. It's a total of 5 stairs to get up here. 2 stacked on top of each other, 2 stacked on top of each other, then the one that's actually in play. So you can kind of go up as high as you want. You can make some really neat, cool spirals that way. All right, let's go over here. So this center section did a couple of neat things. So first was sort of figuring out how to get up to these daises. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I tried a couple of things. And what finally ended up working was just a whole series of stair jacks. So the stair jacks are double-sided, right? So it was, come fill it out. It's a pair of stair jacks on top of each other as a baseline. And then the stair jacks inverted on these steps to level it out, and then paving everything in between with more stair jacks to get a nice seamless transition up from these stairs up to the dais. Because I wanted to feel like it was all built in line and made sense. So then the other thing I didn't know how I was going to do was I wanted the daises to come up to this height, but I wanted it to be circular, and we never made a medium. We have a large curve and we have a small curve, but there's no medium. So like this would be the perfect situation where you start with the large, then you go to medium, and you go to this, build up. We don't have that. So what I did in the bottom was just inverted I took 3 larges and just inverted them, right? So now there's this neat sort of floating effect when you put them on top of each other, and that got up to the height I wanted to get to in the middle. And then just ends up looking kind of cool and magical. That overhang is kind of fun. And this back section here, this is it's just 4 corners that then have the elevation pillar in there, right? So it's just regular dungeon pieces with elevation pillar in there for some support, and then put either walls or floors on there and corner pillars. So that's like there's a very easy way you can just put corners down and pave floors on top of them to make little raised platforms that are very playable, very sturdy, very fun. All right, so I think those are all the fun, tricky bits here. Oh, the little stairs in the back, just nice, like just multiple ways to get. I'm trying to have multiple ways to get to any part of the build. So looking for excuses to put stairs any which way, and then nice sheer drops. Oh, and the other one is I really like doing 3/4 curves are really fun, right? Having a curve come off a square, similar to like our towers coming off a castle corner. It always just looks pleasing, at least to my eye. I really enjoy how the intersection of curves and squares draws your eye, I think. So it makes for a really central, right? This becomes a real central focal point because of that. All right, let's go look at this other bridge. Oh, and we have up here, there's just not related to elevation, but it's a reason to come up. So I'm trying to incentivize going to the different levels and moving around. So we've got the magnetic walls with the magnetic rune stones here. So maybe you have to mess around with these to try and stop the orbs from pulsing. So give players a reason to come up here, reason to explore the map, right? Sometimes you can make this big, cool, 3-foot build and whatever, but if there's no reason for the players to go to all corners of it, like why do you have the giant build? So we're trying to force them to wander around and explore, use the space. All right, let's go look at this bridge. Okay, so for this area, the bottom is pretty standard. It's the dungeon bridge going to elevation blocks into arches using the small stairs, just double stacked up to get up to height, more arches getting up to the top. What's exciting over here is, so we're using the dungeon bridge extension pieces here stacked on elevation blocks and on floors. Sometimes you have to figure out your height. Like I will just stack floors until I figure out the height I want to be. And sometimes I can then substitute elevation blocks in there. If someone has like 2 elevation blocks to get you too high or not, so you need to adjust your height by just stacking up floors until you get to where you want to be. But we did here that's fun is this middle section this is the extension from the castle bridge. So it's designed to be compatible with the dungeon bridge extension and the dungeon bridge. So you can actually suspend this thing between, if you want, you can put this between 2 of the dungeon bridges or a bunch of these pedestals or whatnot. So it pops right in with the pegs. So don't be afraid to use non-dungeon pieces in your dungeon build, right? Like use any pieces that are going to tell the story and make the thing look cool. And what I tried to do here was then put floors, I paved over it with dungeon floors to make everything look kind of cohesive because it is a different color of stone. And what I was trying to do, I wanted to work in like a portcullis wall, the open arch wall with a portcullis or something in here as another obstacle, but I didn't. And we could put like a false floor lid and some spikes or something on here because we have floors, we now have the option to change something out. And one thing we probably should do is have some sort of MacGuffin, maybe here or here, like a reason for the players to go all the way out on this big, long span. Oh, and we terminate over here. It's just the elevation pillars and an arch just makes it look kind of neat to come through. Plus, this gets some playable space up here for giving players a chance to change elevation quickly and easily, or they could dive in the water, I guess. Let's look at this big mambo next. All right, so this big, huge center chunky section is actually pretty easy to execute. It's just 2 terrain trays and a bunch of just core pieces laid out. So I'll pull this off first. So over here, this fun little thing. These are pillars, the little red pillars inverted with the gargoyles on top of them for decor. Oop. Pull this out of the way. All right. I'm going to try to lift this off and see what happens. So we basically just have It's dungeon walls on the bottom, dungeon walls inverted, magneted to a terrain tray, and then floors paved on top, and then some alcoves. I'll show you how to do those alcoves. So we're going to try and lift this thing off, and we'll see if we can reveal what's beneath. It's pretty painless. So I just figured out the perimeter. I'll pull these guys out too so you can see what we got. So we figured out the perimeter by just putting walls down. I put a terrain tray down first, did walls all around the outside, and then using little corners, I put this is the LED alcove, right? I wanted to have these hidden alcoves. I have these little areas of discovery in there, and this thing just looks really neat, especially when it's recessed with the glowing light. So just built inline as if we were building a regular room, and then did the exact same thing upside down on a terrain tray and flipped it over to put on top. So the upper level, if we didn't have this alcove, you could just build one layer as is, put down a terrain tray, build the next layer. But because I wanted to have this big open double high area here, I needed to invert the layer above. And then I have in the back, I have one corner in the middle, so I have one above this to help hold and support the weight in the middle, and then just in the back. So the whole back is open. I mean, you could seal this up if you wanted, if players going around, but mostly it's like a facade. We don't need to seal the whole thing up. So then, lift this thing back up. All right, so we built the exact same thing in reverse on the top, and then just sort of slot it down, and it sits nice and clean. Nope. All right, so that is, it looks big and solid and impressive, but it's pretty easy to accomplish. It's mostly just an illusion. It's a facade, only for the back. And if you need to adjust anything, one nice thing about leaving the back of this open is I can adjust the pieces from the back if I need to. If I need to level anything out, get it to be flat. And maybe we'll turn this thing around at the end so you can see how the back works. But essentially, it's just once we have the terrain tray, right? This is just terrain tray up here. Then I just built on this terrain tray like it was on the table and just built the next layer from there. All right, and finally for this upper section, we just built everything on top of the terrain tray, and then I just double layered the floors here because I just wanted to go up just a little higher, just trying to really accentuate the verticality on this section. It's not necessary. You could have just built all this in line, but having it go up one more floor, it just feels like it has that extra little step up. Is it necessary? I don't know, but maybe the players will feel it. It does use up more pieces than you need to. So if you were running short on floors, you can just build all these in line. And the fun bit, so this back section here is just, once again, walls, regular dungeon pieces built, and then I have a 6x6 terrain tray on there and I'm building on top of that. And the fun thing we can do here, which is a fun reveal that always is at the table, everybody gets excited about it. So we have this little door here. If one of the players goes through the door, then boom, you just grab the terrain tray, lift it up, and you can reveal that room inside. And there's something very exciting when you see a room revealed, particularly if there's something in there, right? We've got some enticing treasure. Now they feel like they made a cool discovery and everybody enjoys that. So then we've got some rune stones in here, so there's a reason to come in here and interact. Maybe it shuts down the orbs or whatnot. But it's very fun to have areas of the build that you can reveal as they discover them. It makes them wonder if there's hidden things in any of the other bits and sort of keeps them on their toes at all times. So lots of techniques. Oh, I forgot. We got one more in the back here. So this is a fun, real simple one. So in the back here for this last crystal, I wanted to do, once again, a 3/4 dais, right? I like the 3/4 round onto a square. So it's daises on the floor, and then I put the back corner up on a dais platform so it becomes the exact same height as the rest of the daises. Everything nestles in there and makes a really good spot for this copper socket and a chromatic orb there for a final orb. All right, before we move on to the next build, Let's just look at the back of this thing so you can see it clean from there. So I'm going to spin this around and see what happens. All right, so you can see we left this is all just wide open here. I mean, you could fill it in with walls if you wanted, but it uses up a bunch of pieces. My assumption was that no one would see this, so this is up against your DM screen. But maybe you'd want to fill in this side, whatever. But it's pretty neat that the front of this thing, it looks like a big solid chunk, and in the back it's just hollow facade. So pretty easy technique, 2 terrain trays, a bunch of walls, stick them together, and boom, off you go. So nice variety of techniques here for lots of good multi-level play. Let's look at one more build for the next part of the class. All right, so this is an artificer's lab deep in the bowels of the earth, right near the molten core, right? So lava is flowing in here, or magma. I guess it's magma because it's deep down here, fueling all these infernal machines. It is a 2-foot by 32-inch build, so almost a 2 by 3 build. And the technique I was trying to demonstrate here was using elevation for depth, right? So you could fundamentally do most of this build just using negative space terrain trays and have that, it would basically work the same. However, I wanted to elevate everything up so that we could go down with the magma and have everything feel a little more dangerous, a little more cinematic. There's something about dropping all of this down 2 inches depth that just makes it feel a little more epic and dangerous. So it was using verticality for effect and for mood. And I think it conjures a scene, right? Players are going to remember this. We're in here. Oh, and the goal with this encounter was lots of points of interest, right? Lots of interactables that could all be potentially dangerous or exploits, and similarly multi-levels of play. Not quite as intense as that previous build. This is more about the hazardous nature of the areas that are not elevated, right? You fall in magma river and that's a bazillion damage. You're dead. So super hazardous areas, and then lots of points of interest. So we're trying to use elevation to not only create the mood by these depressed areas, but then by sort of elevating up the points of interest, right? So all of the sort of the key bits in here are all raised up to bring attention to them. So we're using elevation for a lot of narrative emphasis in this one. So let's start up in this front area here. So this whole section is doing the same technique we did previously, where it's dungeon walls just built down, and then a terrain tray right on top. I didn't have to flip anything upside down, just threw a terrain tray on top and then built right on that. And so that gets this whole area raised up very easily. So you could very easily just, if you wanted to do something similar, put a couple of terrain trays down, lift them up, and then build in between them. In the case of the magma rivers, I had to map that out beforehand because I had to put light panels down and figure out what we were doing. So first things first, and you can see in the time-lapse construction process video, you can see exactly how it is. Sort of laid them down, sketched out where the rivers were going to go, and then figured out where the raised areas were going to go. But if you weren't doing underlit magma rivers, it'd be pretty easy just to throw down some terrain trays to figure out where you're going to go, paved in everything else, and then lift them up. So this is just on top of dungeon floors to make our base level. And I wanted basically everything to be starting at that 2 inches high, so anything that we put down would feel like a dramatic drop. And then the centerpiece here, we're using the new acid furnace, and it's in the sinister paint version of the dread pedestal for a little more emphasis, right? To just make it look even more sinister and dark and draw your attention to it because it's so dark. And I wanted this to be high. Like I wanted to build a platform around it so it would feel like you could work on it, but I didn't want it to be quite as high as the thing. So I built all of these elevation blocks here. Oh, these are actually bridge pedestals, aren't they? So these are in line. I built them down 1 floor height down. So I built them in line with the floors instead of on top of the floors. So it would drop them just a little bit below the height here. So it just makes this feel a little more grand. So the acid furnace is up a little higher. So just sort of paved the whole area around with elevation blocks. and then draw your eye to this. And we've got the floor fog under there, so we get the nice fog coming out, and that really helps set the scene, make it feel a little dangerous, right? This thing's coming out, you don't know what's going to happen. Working our way back here, we have a bridge situation here, and this is a fun hybrid. It's using the bridge extension pedestal there, and then that's going into same technique as before, right? It's the 1x4 floors on one of the ancient pillars, and I inverted the ancient pillar to make it look a little more dangerous because the narrow part's on the bottom. And then we've dropped the portcullis arch there to make it a little more dangerous, right? Getting stuck on this bridge where you could fall off the lava makes it a little more dangerous. These sections in the back here, so it's regular dungeons, one level of dungeon floor or dungeon walls down there, and then I inverted the next level of dungeon walls underneath the terrain tray and then built this one on top just to help hold everything in place. So you could lift, let's see if we pull that out. Well, these guys off, we could just lift this whole thing as one unit. All right, so it's just, let's see, flip it around so we can see it. All right, so it's just walls, dungeon walls and corners magneted on the bottom of the terrain tray, and then the other ones on the top are magneted on. So the terrain tray really holds everything in place. So it's a 4x8 terrain tray, and the same thing down here, just walls. We lost one. Oh, the construct wall. This doesn't have a magnet. Where did he go? Whoop. Construct wall here. Boom. And then the little fun gag I did up here was we took the dungeon arch, it's the double door wall, and pulled the double door out and then put a railing from City Builder in there. In general, I like to not have railings on my raised things so they're more dangerous, but then this kind of makes this feel like a safer area you could interact with. Like when you're out here, you have the threat of falling is high, especially with no railing. But here it makes it a little safer zone. Oh, I should also note, so this is predominantly built with dungeons pieces. We're using the Hellscape magma rivers for the down below, and then a bunch of the accessories are pulled from our full range, just to sort of show how you can create the mood by using accessories. But you could build something similar just using dungeon bits, or not accessorize it or use somebody else's accessories. The accessories aren't the driver so much as the verticality and the shape, the shell of this thing is what we're looking at here. All right, so moving on over here, we have this little section here, we have the dungeon bridge. It was going into this floor. I wanted to make sure it was super secure, so this is the bridge extension from the castle bridge, because it's got the peg there. So I'm using that to hold this on to really make sure that this doesn't slip. You could just put a regular dungeon floor there and maybe just throw a little white stick or just not worry about it. But I wanted to make sure it was super sturdy and super playable. It wouldn't tip if the players put their mini and push down. So no disasters at the table. All right, so coming off the bridge here, we have this lower section here. So the idea was we were wanted to use the fact that we've got this ability to go down. Let's encourage the players to go down. So maybe you could do something where you have there's an NPC that's trapped in the circle. The players have to come down to free them. So over here we've got just a dungeon arch with a couple of the little stairs leading us down, and this is a stair jack because it was a little smaller to get us down here. And this bottom platform is it's a 4x4 dungeon floor in Sinister, and it's 4 dais platforms down there. So just trying to raise this just a little bit above the height of the lava, so it feels like it's its own little standalone platform. But maybe it's a thing, you're taking heat damage when you're down there. We're really close to lava, it's dangerous. And we use the Sinister 4x4 down here to make it feel even more dark and mysterious. It sort of blends in with the Hellscape pieces better. Let's work our way back up. So back here, this is our what is this, furnace portal furnace. It's the Artificer Hero Reliquary from a Reliquaries line. It's such a cool standalone accessory if you're doing like any sort of Artificer build. So because this is a big centerpiece here, put it on top of the Dread pedestal with the bladed ziggurat on it, and then this thing on top. And you could probably I should have put a light puck under there, because there's a little bit of a light leaking around, so then the light would have been coming around the sides and make a neat little uplight or something around that, make an even more bigger deal out of it. But we're trying to, once again, elevate this up, make it feel really grand, draw everybody's attention to it, because maybe this is the doomsday contraption or whatever that they have to deal with. And once again, these are elevation blocks back here in line with the floors, and then walls on top of them, so then they level out. Because the bladed ziggurat there has helped to lift it up, so I leveled this all out, so it felt like the one of the Dread pedestal to feel like it was built in line with everything. It was making this sort of big upper platform. And then the LEDs are there to also, once again, help sort of draw your eye to, like, this is the big thing you've got to deal with. And then over here, we're using the small stairs. Like, I love these little stairs. Doing these little tiny cross stairs here and there is like fun. They're so playable because they've got the easy landings there. Just a couple of ways to get up and around is inviting. It's inviting the players to come in and play. Oh, and then also I should note, in a couple of locations, we did it here with this is the warded trapdoor, did it over here with it's the sewer grate and the trapdoor floor. And then all the way over here, back with the acid furnace, did it over here, trying to accentuate the feeling of being able to go down, right? Because this whole thing that's having these drains and trapdoors is, once again, sort of narratively driving people like, oh, there's a sense of down, there's stuff below. We'll just keep going down, descending into the depths of the earth. So once again, sort of using elevation for narrative driver. And then epic stairs just feeding up to this thing. So lots of open space. So even though there's a ton of accessories in here and a lot of points of interest, tons and tons of open space to have a combat, fit minis, move around, have a really interesting dynamic fight. Like, I sometimes will over clutter with accessories. I feel like this is me holding back a little bit, but I think it's enough that really give the flavor, but there's still tons of playable space in here. Let's go over to the bridge here. Oof. All right, so for this bridge, I did a couple things. One, I wanted to set everything at 45 degrees because it's more interesting if you're working on everything that's orthogonal. It's nice to get the diagonal. It just makes it feel a little more organic, real. So to that end, had to make sure there were enough platforms on the other side to support it. So it's just a bridge, just pegged together in the middle. Underneath it here, we've got, I put the snake floor from the Forsaken Temple on there just for so you see a little decor, and it's at the 45-degree angle, so it looked kind of neat. Totally unnecessary. And this back section, once again, it's just a bunch of walls, terrain tray, floors paved on top of it. And I raised everything up on this side is up one floor height higher than on this side. So this area is just a little bit higher. So once again, to draw, if the players are sort of coming in from over there and looking from over here, just drawing, makes the back feel a little more epic and helps draw your eye up and out. So to level these out, over here using a Dread pedestal. We didn't need to, but it has a couple of neat things because, once again, at the 45 degrees, we can get this line set up so it looks really neat at the edge of the bridge like this. I just sort of liked the visual, and then we're using the stair jacks to step up to it. And just made a bigger deal out of it because it's little decorative bits there. It was like it was drawing attention. And once again, it draws attention to the bridge and makes the bridge feel like more of a centerpiece, right? So we're trying to accentuate all the big narrative points where something dramatic might happen. So because inevitably when something dramatic does happen, here are the players, if it looks and feels more dramatic in their minds, that those memories are going to be even stronger, and that when they're recounting the tales of this adventure, this is going to help. They're not going to realize it, but it's going to shore up that cinematic feel to the scene. So just Dread pedestal on there. I was messing around with floors. I stacked floors until I got to the height I need it to be to line up with this, and then cut it there and through the bridge down. All right, so we're going to continue. We're going to finish up our journey over here. Not really elevation, but kind of fun to see it. We snuck in a little bit of Starforged. We got the pipes and cat-like system in here, and then 2 floors. They make a really nice base for these. Are more of the from our reliquaries, Artificer Reliquaries collection. Ties that all together real nicely. All right, so this last section, last point of interest here, it's a bladed ziggurat, inverted. It's on top of an LED floor with the fire pot in it, so they can light up using the stinker there, and then put the soul cage from Hellscape on there. I don't know what gets ground up in there, but it looks terrible. But once again, doing the same gag where I'm trying to build this in line, right? We're trying to raise up the area around it. I've said a whole bunch. Anytime you raise something up, it looks more important, right? It tells you that's the thing to look at. So this is just, we've got daises under these walls just to raise everything up, and then use the little curved corner fill pieces, double stacked, the curved corner fill pieces. So we'll get 2 of those double stacked to level this out and make it feel like it's all integrated with some steps up. So it makes, instead of putting the accessories on top of the floor, and now it feels like the whole thing is baked in, it's part of this thing, right? It's this crafted contraption that's part of the thing. So it just it makes the whole thing feel somehow tied together and more real. You might have noticed from this one, a lot of it's talking about like trying to accomplish a feel with a building. Like a lot of building can be, like you're trying to convey an emotion, because that will then create the framework for your story, right? And help set the mood for the players. Tell them to sort of give them the cues so that they're picking that up, and it'll intensify the scene. So finally, we have this little area going down here. So it's a little janky, but it works, right? So it's just a pair of 2x1 dais platforms. The lava is a little uneven, so these don't sit flat, but it's just enough, like, the steps there. You could put a little white stick or something, but it should be fine. Like you could put some white stick if you're worried about it. And this descends us down to, we got some daises here, feeding us down into this mysterious dark door here. And we're doing the same gag. I love putting a room under a terrain tray so it can lift off and reveal it. So let's move. I have to move these, and then the rest should come off nice and clean. So when the players go in the mysterious door, can lift off and reveal what is in the inner sanctum here. So we're using the sinister dungeon paint to make it feel particularly dark and mysterious. And here's a magic pool. Maybe this is a source of energy for the whole thing that connected to the crystal somehow. And those ghost fire torches giving it a very eerie mood to this room. So it feels like you've discovered something neat. So always fun if you can lift off and reveal a thing. Players get a little sense of discovery. One of the pillars of adventure, right? So then one last little technique we'll show is over here. This was Toby's idea. I think it was really clever. So I wanted to have the lava going through, but have a bridge. So this makes it feel like the lava has like melted through the stone. So it makes everything feel a little more dangerous, right? So it's a 4x8 terrain tray with just regular pieces magneted underneath. So these are just the vaulted ruins there, and it gives a sense that the magma has rushed through and melted the stone. So adds the element of danger, right? More emotional results of building. So another thing we could have done is we could have taken the double door arch, pop the door out, so we just have the arch part, and we could put that in there. Okay. And then we're gonna put some corner fill pillars in there, just saying, but that would make it feel a little maybe more elegant, more designed, less violent. If we want to change the feel of it, so do that, and then we could take these are the corner fill pillars, pop those in there. Did something like this. Boom, boom. Is that in there? I'm trying to do it without seeing it. Oh. Something like that. Or you could also actually just take the double arch that we removed, and we could just put that in front of it too for sort of designed look. So I think maybe the lesson of this build is you can build for emotional impact. So all these sort of choices are trying to create a feel. Hopefully, this will inspire you in all the many ways you can build vertically. For other inspiration, check out our time-lapse construction process video for the second build in this class. And for other tips and tricks, take a look at our Dungeons playlist. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and think about subscribing so you don't miss out on any of our content here at Dwarven Forge. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see what sort of epic vertical builds you create using the techniques in this class. And now, it's back to the anvil.